Some of the most Irish surnames alive today never came from Ireland at all. There is a surname so common you've met a dozen people who carry it. It sounds Irish, it feels Irish, and it was invented by the Irish to mean one thing: foreigner, a raider, a Viking. That name is on this list, and it's not alone, because these names came off the decks of longships, carried by the Norsemen who burned this island's monasteries, emptied its treasuries, and then did something no one expected. They stayed. They married in. They became Irish so completely that 1,000 years later, the families who carry their names are certain they're pure Gael. They're wrong. 12 surnames. 12 names that Ireland swallowed so whole the raiders were forgotten, and only the names survived. And by the end of this video you will know, with no doubt left, whether one of them is yours. Stay to the end, because the last 3 names on this list hide their Viking blood better than any of them, and the final name belongs to men who were so completely absorbed that they became more Irish than the Irish themselves. Watch for it. Your name survived the raids, the settlements, 1,000 winters. The only question left is where it truly began, and we start with the name that sounds pure Irish and was built, letter by letter, to mean the dark foreigner, Doyle. In Irish, O Dubhale. And here is the secret buried inside it. The name literally means descendant of the dark foreigner. Dub, dark or black. Gaul, foreigner. And in early medieval Ireland, that word was coined for exactly one kind of stranger, the Norsemen who came by sea. The Irish even split them in two. The fair foreigners, the Finn Gael, were read by tradition as the Norwegians, and the dark foreigners, the Dubgail, as the Danes. The name Doyle is a 1,000-year-old Gaelic label for a Viking newcomer, worn so long it became one of the most Irish names on the island. It clusters today across Wexford, Wicklow, Carlow, the exact coastline the Vikings hit first and held longest. If your name is Doyle, tradition holds you don't descend from a Gaelic clan at all. You descend from the dark foreigners themselves. Now Doyle at least admits what it is, if you know the language. But the next name does the opposite. It wears an ordinary Irish face and hides the name of a foreign king underneath it, McManus. In Irish, Mac Magnuus, son of Magnus. And Magnus is where the mask slips, because it isn't a Gaelic name. It's the Irish spelling of the Norse royal name Magnus, the name of kings of Norway, thought to have entered the Norse world through Magnus the Good, and flowed from there into the Norse-Irish kingdoms of the sea. Irish families who took the name Magnus were tying themselves, knowingly or not, to that Norse royal line. The McManus rose in Fermanagh and Roscommon, bound tight to the great Gaelic dynasties, yet the name at their root was carried in on a Viking tongue. If your name is McManus, the Great One your family is named for wore a Norse crown before he ever wore an Irish one. But if a hidden king surprises you, wait, because the next name doesn't hide anything at all. Once you hear what it means, you'll wonder how nobody ever told the families who carry it that their surname is, word for word, son of the Viking land, McLaughlin. In Irish, Maclachlan, and this one confesses the moment you know one word. Lachlan was the old Irish name for the land of the Norsemen, Scandinavia itself. A Lachlanach was a man of the fjords, so Maclachlan reads, at its root, as son of the Viking land. Be careful here, and I'll be honest with you, because it matters. Some McLaughlin lines descend from the northern Uí Nail and took the name from an ancestor called Lachlan, not from Norse blood directly, but the word itself was chosen from a world where the Norse had come and settled and become part of the story. A name like this could not have existed anywhere the Vikings had never reached. If your name is McLaughlin, your surname is stamped with the old Irish word for the Viking homeland. So far these names carry Norse words, but the next one carries a Norse man, a real Viking with a real name, whose blood you may be walking around with right now. Cotter. In Irish, Mac Oitir, and Oitir is pure Norse. It's the Old Norse personal name Otar, a genuine Viking name worn by warriors and chieftains. This isn't a Gaelic word in disguise. This is a Scandinavian man who came to Ireland, put down roots, and became a family that has lasted 1,000 years. The Cotters settled in the far south, around the harbors of Cork, Viking country, well known to the longships, and they carried that Norse name unbroken to the present day. Most of them, never suspecting the Otar at its heart, came across the North Sea with a blade. If your name is Cotter, you carry the name of a Norseman called Otar, passed hand to hand for 1,000 years without a single break. Now here's one that stops people cold. The next name is one of the most ordinary surnames in the English-speaking world. You know someone who has it, and there's a good chance the word Viking is hidden inside it. Literally, Higgins, in Irish, O'Higgin, and the traditional reading of Hugin is the part that stops people. It's thought to come from the Old Norse Vikingur, Viking itself. A Higgin, in this reading, was a sea raider, and O'Higgin would mean, plainly, descendant of the Viking. I'll be straight with you. Scholars argue over this one, and some read the root differently. But the reason Higgins appears on every serious list of Norse-Irish names is that tradition holds the word Viking is folded directly into it. The O'Higgin were a famous learned family, poets and scholars of Sligo and the West. If your name is Higgins, the word at the very root of it may be the word for the raiders who came by sea. From a word to a king. The next name isn't just Norse, it's Royal Norse. It carries the name of a Viking king so famous that kings of Dublin and kings of Norway both wore it. McAuliffe, in Irish, McAuliffe, and Amhlove is the Gaelic form of Olaf, Olaf, one of the most famous Viking royal names that ever existed, worn by kings of Dublin and kings of Norway alike. A family that became McAuliffe was, in the most literal sense, the sons of a man named Olaf. The McAuliffes rose in County Cork, a branch tied to the mighty McCarthy dynasty, but the founding name at their root is unmistakably Norse. Every time the name is spoken aloud, a Viking king's name is spoken with it. If your name is McAuliffe, you are, at the root of everything, a son of Olaf. Kings are one thing, but the next name may run back to a specific Viking warrior, one who stood on the losing side of the most famous battle in all of Irish history. Broderick, in Irish, O Bruadair, and Bruadair is thought to come from the Old Norse name Brother. There was a famous Brother in Irish history. A Viking leader tradition places at the Battle of Clontarf in the year 1014, the very battle where the High King Brian Boru shattered Norse power in Ireland. By tradition, it was a fleeing Norseman who cut Brian down in his tent that day. The O Bruadair line carried that Norse name forward through the south and west. Anglicized, it became Broderick, a name that sounds entirely at home in Ireland and beyond, giving nothing away about the raider at its source. If your name is Broderick, tradition traces you to a Norseman named Brother, a name tied to the bloodiest day the Vikings ever spent on Irish soil. We're past the halfway mark, and every name left is deeper Norse than the last. But before I show you the final 5, including a name lifted straight from a Viking king of Dublin, there's something almost nobody watching realizes about their own surname. If you've ever wondered how deep the Norse runs in your own family, whether your name is Gael, Viking, Norman, or some braid of all three tangled together, I've put the whole map into a guide called Where Do You Really Come From? The link's in the description below. But don't go anywhere, because what's coming is the deepest part of the list. A name that means ruler of the gods, a Norse warrior called the Bear, and a surname that is, quite simply, the name of the Viking kings who ruled Dublin and struck the first coins ever made in Ireland. Reynolds, in Irish, Mac Ragnall. And Ragnall is the Gaelic form of the Old Norse Rognvaldr, a name meaning something close to ruler with the power of the gods. It belonged to Norse jarls and sea kings across the Viking world, including rulers of the Kingdom of the Isles and the Norse of the Irish Sea. The Mac Ragnall settled in County Leitrim as a recognized Gaelic sept, and still, the name they carried was Norse to its marrow. Anglicized, it became the thoroughly English-sounding Reynolds, snipping the last thread anyone could see back to the fjords. If your name is Reynolds, the ruler your family is named for was a Viking called Rognvaldr. The next name comes with a warning. It has 2 completely different origins that sound almost identical, and one of them is Gaelic to the bone, while the other is the name of a Norse warrior. Which one is yours depends entirely on where in Ireland your family stood. Bairna, in Irish, Mac Bairn. And here you have to be careful, because two families wear nearly the same name from opposite sources. One line, the O'Byrnes of Wicklow, O'Broin, descends from the Raven Kings of Leinster. Purely, fiercely native. Not on this list, but the other, the Mac Bairn of Roscommon and Connacht, is thought to come from the Old Norse name Bjorn, which means bear. It was a classic Viking name, taken by warriors who wanted the strength of the animal. So the answer hangs on geography. If your Bairna line runs back to Wicklow, you're pure Gael. But if it runs back to Connacht, tradition holds you descend from a Norseman named the Bear. And now we reach the name I promised you, the one taken straight from the Viking kings who ruled Dublin, minted its coins, and stood at the very center of the Norse world in Ireland. Sugrue, in Irish, O Sugrue, but older still, Mac Cittric. And Cittric is one of the most important Norse names in all of Irish history. It's the Gaelic form of Sigdriggr, the name of several Viking kings of Dublin, most famously Cittric Silkbeard, who ruled Dublin around the time of Clontarf and struck the first coins ever minted in Ireland. The families who carried Cittric down the centuries were keeping alive the name of a dynasty that ruled one of the great Norse cities of the Western world. The Sugrues ended up far south in Kerry, but the king's name at their root once wore a crown in Viking Dublin. If your name is Sugrue, you carry the name of the Viking kings of Dublin themselves. And here's what almost no one realizes. That same royal Norse name reached Ireland twice, down two different rivers, and became two different surnames. The next name is the second one. Most people who carry it are certain it's an old, hard Western Gaelic name. It's a Viking king in disguise, McKitterick. In Irish, Mac Shittrick, and yes, this is the same royal root as the last, Sigtrigr, the name of the Viking kings of Dublin. But the McKittericks carried it down a different channel entirely, settling across the west and northwest. The name stayed closer to its Norse shape, listen, and you can still hear the Cittric, the Sigtrigr, locked inside Kitarik. People assume it's a rugged old Gaelic surname, all hard stone and Western consonants. And it is old, but its origin is a Norse king's name, carried inland from the coast and kept alive, unbroken for 1,000 years. If your name is McKitterick, you've been carrying a Viking king's name your whole life without knowing it, which leaves the 12th and final name. I told you at the start the last name belonged to men so completely absorbed they became more Irish than the Irish themselves. Here they are. Groarca, in Irish, Mac Ruark, and Ruark is thought by tradition to come from the Old Norse name Hroker, a genuine Viking name, absorbed into Gaelic Ireland so totally that the surname became one of the fiercest, most native-sounding names of Connacht. And that is the whole story of this list, arriving at its purest form. A Norse name, carried by men who came to raid and take and burn, sinking so deep into Irish soil that 1,000 years later, their descendants stand certain they are pure Gael, with no idea that the name they defend as Irish was once shouted across the deck of a longship. They are Irish now. That much is true. But the names remember what the families forgot. They remember the sails on the horizon. If your name is Groark, tradition traces you back to a Norseman called Hroker. 12 surnames. 12 names Ireland absorbed so completely that the raiders vanished and only the names were left behind. And here's the truth. The history reveals. The Vikings didn't just raid Ireland and sail home. They built Dublin, Waterford, Wexford, Cork, and Limerick, the island's first real cities. They married into its dynasties. They gave Ireland kings and coins and ships and trade. And they gave it names. Names so worn in and familiar that the people who carry them today feel Irish to the bone. They are Irish. That's the truth of it. But their names are a memory of the men who came across the gray North Sea with axes and longships, and who, in the end, didn't conquer Ireland. Ireland conquered them. So tell me, drop your surname in the comments, and tell me whether your line runs back to the Gael, the Viking, or both tangled together. And if your family carried a story out of Ireland about where the name truly began, say it. Those stories deserve to be heard. And if you made it all the way to the end, subscribe. Because every week we trace another set of names people carry without ever knowing what they truly mean. Next week, it might be yours.